Let me see. Yeah, I think that top probably. I'll go put on something that looks like it's clothing. Does that look like it's my bra or something? It might, right?
Well, yeah, I can see it. Yeah.
Okay, let me just change.
Hello, Rebecca. How are you? I think you're muted. Yeah.
Hi, I'm good. Can you hear me? I'm not completely sure about my headphones.
Yes, I can hear you perfectly. I'm going to make you a co-host so you can share your slides. So let's make sure that that works. Do you see the share screen button at the bottom?
Bigger, share screen.
Perfect.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Should we leave it like that for now, or?
We can start with it down, and then once Lesley does her intro,
Okay.
then you can start the screen share. Perfect.
Good.
How are you today?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm okay.
Yeah.
A little cold down here in the basement, so I'm like all bundled up.
Where are you at geographically?
I'm in New York. How about you?
I'm in Chicago, and we're having
Oh.
gloom, our spring gloom, which is par for the course.
Gloomy times.
Yeah, just sort of this. We have these springs that are endless clouds and rain.
Oh, really? How long does that go on for?
Well, the last few years, it used to be bad in April and then it would let up in May. And the last few years, it seems to have moved to May. So I get very crabby about it.
Yeah.
Not fair. I want spring.
Yeah, I understand that totally. So thank you, Rebecca. I'm psyched that we got a chance to bring you in to meet our group. Let me see where we are with our. This will be fun if it's interactive. The more interactive, the better, which is great.
Good. Yeah, that's how I like to do it.
Yeah, and everybody's concerned about telling their story. 1, 2, 3, 4.
I'm all caught in my hair here.
7, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So we have 13 people, which is great. Some will have it on recording because they can't be here in this time zone.
Okay.
And I'm trying to figure out, something changed in the last week. I think it's vaccines. And so people are not showing up like they used to, like everybody used to show up. Now it's like some people show. So it's like really weird. Like people are, I think they're out there, taking a walk or doing.
Life is coming back.
Yeah. So I'm trying to figure out, how do we adapt to that? Because we had a captive audience, literally. And it was really great. I mean, we were teaching, 3 days a week, and we'd have, 25 people every single time. And then literally just in the last week, it's got to be the vaccines. I'm going out with a survey to find out what's going on.
Yeah, I think so. I've been out and about much more since my, 2-week post-vaccine mark. I was like, okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, why not? As soon as I got mine, I'm going to, I've actually signed up to go with a friend to an event. I'm like, woohoo, gonna go to an event.
A real event? Like,
yeah, a real event. We went to dinner at a friend's house across the street over the weekend on Saturday. And the hilarious part was, by 8:30 it started. We got there at 6. It started like at 5:30. By 8:30, I'm looking at my watch. I'm having a great time, but I'm like, it's kind of my bedtime.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to stay. I'm like getting tired. I don't know if I want to stay.
I'm worried about trying to adjust to a normal bedtime again.
So bizarre.
I get in bed with my book and sometimes my laptop to watch a movie or, watch a
Oh
show.
yeah, I've been
Like
watching on the
in
Netflix
there.
and yeah, and you get adapted to it. It's like the zoo. I'm like the zoo animal now. And you want to set me free? Like,
Yeah.
really?
Oh no, I'm not ready for that.
I'm not ready to go free. It's really hilarious.
Hopefully we can ease our way back.
Yeah, I think that's the key to the whole thing is,
Yeah.
I think once we're used to it, we're going to be ecstatic.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, and I think people will feel very confident and comfortable. But it's, until then,
Right. Right.
it's just all over the place right now. I
It
find.
is like, can you do this?
Right.
Are they vaccinated?
And things are open and not open, I mean, it's weird. Like I went to a new area of town yesterday and some of the stores are open and some are not. And, it's still confusing, which is
I
great.
was, on the bus coming through downtown Chicago yesterday. And, so much closed because the office buildings didn't have people.
Right.
And, it was starting to be a little more, active, but still just not what it used to be when we were all going to work in the same place.
Yeah. A friend of mine sent me a picture of Grand Central Station downstairs in the second level where I used to catch my train every day going home.
Mm-hmm.
Empty. It was like,
wow.
Not a soul in there. Maybe on a Sunday, like at 2, you would walk through there and there'd be nobody there, but it was bizarre. I was like, oh God, I forgot about that place. Usually you're like flying through there, tearing up the stairs, trying to catch a train, hundreds of people all charging in the same direction. It was so creepy. Really creepy looking, like depressing, sad.
It's very depressing to see. Yeah, and probably New York, like Chicago, boarded a lot of places up during all the unrest, and
right.
So then it was even more weird. It was not just closed and empty, but it was also boarded up. And
yeah, at the beginning of the pandemic, I saw that on Fifth Avenue and Saks Fifth Avenue. They had it all boarded up, and they had guys with dogs standing out in front of it. That was just, I was like, oh God, I used to go there at lunchtime just to like free my mind. And stuff, I think that would be so depressing. I'm glad I'm not there, So I'm psyched about this.
Good.
How many people do we have any numbers on people who are doing job interviews virtually? Has anybody collected anything? Do we know?
I don't have any.
Yeah, I was wondering because I wonder if it'll continue to be virtual.
One thing that I've realized because I interview people for my clients, is instead of doing a phone interview, are you admitting people, Marissa? Because
not yet.
Well, at 2, so in 3 minutes I will.
Oh,
so
okay. I see.
Ignore that.
Yeah, it comes up on mine. I wanted to make sure I wasn't supposed to be doing it.
Very good.
Instead of doing a first phone screen, I'd rather do a first video interview because it's just a little more. You get a little more information. So, but I think leaving the first interview or the first one that might have been in person on video is a nice way to be able to maybe see more people. And I don't know, I think it's great. I think we'll all want to go back to kind of meeting in person before a final offer, although I did just get a job offer from a totally virtual experience.
Oh really?
Yeah.
What is it to do?
It's an HR director for a progressive political organization. So
cool.
I'm actually going to take it. So
you are. You'll have to let us know when you can talk about it. That's cool.
Okay. Yeah.
And you did it all virtually? The whole thing?
All virtually, yeah. And I thought that would feel really like strange, like I hadn't gotten to know them, but I don't know if it was the people, but I do feel like I got to know them.
I think you can, I don't know about other people, but I find Zoom is, yes, it's exhausting for various reasons, But I feel it's as good as like if we were sitting across the table having a coffee. I mean, I
Yeah,
feel like I can really get to know people very well.
yeah. It's much better than I would have expected it to
Me
be.
too. Me too.
And it did serve, like, I was surprised how much it helped me feel connected to my family.
Yes.
Because my family doesn't live by me anyway, I was Zooming with them. It was like, well, this is way better than phone calls. Why weren't we always doing this?
Yeah. I started FaceTiming with my daughter from afar when she was doing, she was traveling in France in college. And so we would just prop her on the table, kitchen table while I was cooking. So we got used to that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, I mean, it's amazing how it really cuts down on, missing somebody. And I mean,
Yeah.
again, I know there are a lot of issues. They've done studies to show that Zoom is exhausting for various reasons.
Yeah.
But I find it's kind of amazing. I don't know. And I
It's
like
great.
not having to, run for a train and
Yeah,
um, travel through the bad weather to get somewhere. I don't know.
yeah.
It's just me.
It's some efficiency for sure.
Yep. Okay. I'm gonna bring them in. They come in slowly.
Okay.
So, some people, we'll give it till like 3 after, Rebecca, and then
Sounds good.
we'll start at about 3 after. Let me see.
Okay.
Was it just Deborah right now?
Yeah, I saw Kate join earlier and then she left. Kate Brogan.
Yeah, I saw Kate also.
Hi,
Hi, Deborah. How are you?
I'm okay. I was kind of cleaning here, so I'm
That's
looking
all right.
looking rather disheveled. So I thought I'd
Disheveled
spare
is
you.
fine. We are, I call it Kaya. Come as you are.
Oh, well, this is beyond that. So
All
I'm
right,
just gonna
that's your,
like keep it off for today.
that's fine. That's your decision. But so nice to see you. I'm glad you're doing well. Are you still in New York or where are you?
Well, I'm close to New York. I'm in Jersey. I live in Jersey City, and I pretty much work out of New York. So, but late since COVID, I've been working out of my apartment. So, and I kind of like it actually.
Yeah, well, we were just saying that, how much we actually like a lot of this stuff and how it's odd because this sort of getting started again thing is kind of bizarre.
I think it's going to be hard for a lot of people. I have a friend who's had a PR firm for so many years in Manhattan, and he's been working out of his house, and he's hard pressed to go back. He's not looking forward to it. So
I know people who don't want to go back. My son has made up his mind. He doesn't want to go back full time into New York, and he has to figure out how he's going to talk to his boss about that, but he doesn't want to do it.
I think a lot of places are going to do hybrid
Thank God.
because, yeah, people have, gotten used to it, and there's you can't really say it doesn't work because it it worked.
Yeah, I think the efficiency has been shown to be there and that people should have a choice. I mean, I just think about how much better my life would have been if I wasn't running for a commuter train every single day at like 7 or 8 in the morning. I mean,
Exactly.
yeah,
Every day it's exhausting. And when you have that, when you don't have to get up, get dressed, get out the door the next morning, it's like a
holiday.
a little mini vacation for an hour in the morning.
it's
All
funny.
right.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean
Go ahead. Who was that? Deborah, go ahead.
I was just going to say my daughter was a senior in high school this year, and she decided she was going to do hybrid. So she was going in 2 days a week until she realized that the teacher was actually teaching to those who were still at home. So and she was like, well, why am I getting up at 7 when I could sleep till like 8:25 and just roll out of bed? And then after a while, they weren't even rolling out of bed. They were just doing classes from bed. So.
And she up in bed. Oh, hilarious. That's great.
But I'm really curious. Like I have a son who's here. He's been a year remote. He has not physically met any of his colleagues ever.
Mm.
And that's a real, you know, for us who know our workplace, know
Yeah.
everyone in the office, that's fine. We can do this. But I think the new people coming in, particularly now, he's got assigned to be a mentor to somebody that he's never met before that's coming in now this summer.
Mm.
It's a really different mindset. And I don't know how long the center can hold on that, if you know what I mean, for the organization, right? There's no connectivity. You know what I mean? Like you always knew who you could go for on jamming the copy machine, or who would have, you know, what was going on in the C-suite. You know what I mean? You knew those people. How does it work when you have never met them?
Yeah, I think that's going to be the big issue is, you know, they got to come up with a new way of connecting people. Maybe once a quarter, you have a big event, you bring everybody together and they stay for 3 days, or, you know, you do something. But I agree with you, Renee. My son has the same thing. He's been remote most of the time. And it's like when you're having trouble with your boss, you don't have that connection with the person you met in the lunchroom to say, you know, can we have coffee? Like, I know you've been here a long time. I
Yeah.
can't figure this guy out. You know, there's no cross the silos either. Like a lot of my best mentors came from cross silo, from meeting them at different things. So they don't have that, which yes, they'll have, but there are functional ways that they should be able to figure that out. So I'm going to start us. We have a few more people coming, so they will join as we go, but I don't want to hold us up because Rebecca has some great stuff. So welcome everybody. Don't worry about your hair. Eat your lunches. We are that kind of place. You can see I've devolved into, I don't wear makeup anymore, and you're lucky if you get clean hair because usually I'm on my way to the gym. I want to tell you about Rebecca Tancredi, who I'm so excited that she's willing to do this. And some people have just, I can't remember who it was just asking about storytelling. It's such a big thing. If you do it in your life like I do, to me, it's not a big thing because that's all I've done. But for people who haven't done it their whole lives, I learned when I went on a Vital Voices trip to mentor people around the world. And they paired us with people in different countries. We were in Brazil, and I had to give a whole presentation about how to tell your story to, you know, entrepreneurs who were putting their stories in a different language. I couldn't read what she had on her website, but they just didn't know the basics of it, which was so interesting. So it's the key to most things and getting your brand going and all that. So here's Rebecca. Rebecca Tancredi is a career and leadership coach with unique background in corporate human resources and nonprofit leadership. As the Vice President of Programs at Upwardly Global, Rebecca and her team help thousands of immigrants and refugees navigate the professional job search despite many barriers and successfully return to their careers in the US. In her HR work, she has interviewed many candidates and knows what makes individuals stand out. So Rebecca, I'll turn this over to you. This will be interactive, so some of you will want to make sure that you're available for the interactive part. And people will be joining us as we go, and if not, we'll be sending it to them in video.
Great, thank you, Lesley. Yeah, I'm really glad to be here, everybody. You know, my idea for this session came from doing a lot of and doing a lot of job interviewing, and realizing that as we get older, our stories are more complicated, and it's harder to like tell this concise, you know, story that makes sense, that is easy to digest, because we've just lived more and we've done more, and we've had more twists and turns. And so, you know, I thought a lot about that. And, you know, we one of the things that we used to teach at Upwardly Global when we were teaching immigrants about the job search is the elevator pitch. And of course, we've probably all heard that we need an elevator pitch. Well, that, you know, when you think about, again, when your journey's got more twists and turns and complications, it's harder to make it that concise pitch. And I think we need to think about it more like a story. And so that's what I've spent some time on. So I am gonna go ahead and share my screen. So just a sec.
we're such a small group. Rebecca, do you mind if people have questions while we go through, they can just ask them outright?
I love that. And it is going to be interactive. So I'm going to ask you all some questions too.
Right.
So
Super.
just take yourself off mute and dive right in when you want to. And the first thing we're actually going to do is start out, oh, there we go. It's different on Zoom to move your slides, and I tend to forget that. We're going to start out with a poll. So this is a would you rather. So you've got your options here. Which of these things would you rather do? Which one is least intimidating? Or there's an option if you think they're all truly awful. Give people more time to answer. Okay, great. All right, so we've got a nice mix here. Some people would rather write a cover letter, which gives you time that might appeal to the introvert to write and rewrite and edit. Being interviewed for a job, we got a little more response to one-on-one networking with somebody you admire professionally. Networking with complete strangers, which I never thought I would miss so much, but boy, do I miss that. Networking in a room, having the glass of wine after the conference and just getting to talk to people. Miss that a lot.
Exhausting though. I'm going to tell you, you're going to find out now that you haven't done it in a year how exhausting that is, even though I love it. It's tiring.
That's true. But these are all places. Oh, could you all see the results?
Did you share them?
I just shared them now. Can everybody see
it now? Yes. Okay, they can
everybody
see.
can see them. So again, we had a little bit more on the one-on-one networking, and followed by being interviewed. But these are all places where we tell our story. And, we tell it a little differently based on which of these we're doing. But there's some common elements to it. It's going to be a short story, right? Because probably someone doesn't want to sit down for an hour-long version of our lives. But it might be shorter in that networking, session with a complete stranger, but longer if we're sitting down with that person that we admire professionally for a networking session. At the beginning of a job interview, somebody might say, so just tell me about yourself. Well, that's a pretty open question for a little bit longer of a story. But somebody might ask more, well, just tell me about the last 5 years of your career. And then that's going to be a little shorter of a story. But in all these instances, and when we create kind of a few versions of our story for different situations and different lengths, think of yourself as the heroine, right? And so sometimes you're the heroine who's driving a happy ending to a story. Sometimes it's a cliffhanger. So for example, you're in an interview, you're probably going to tell a lot of little stories about who you are at work. And those stories definitely have happy endings. About saving the day. Or maybe you're telling a story about your volunteer work. And again, happy ending, right? Some of our stories end in a cliffhanger. So since early 2020, just before the pandemic started, I started doing something very different. And I was exploring and experimenting. So my story didn't really have an end. It was more of a cliffhanger. And when I was introducing myself to people, I didn't want to cut off any options. So I didn't want to say, I'm a career and leadership coach. I do this, that's it. So, sometimes my story would end on, I might go back to a full-time job. It simply depends on if it were an opportunity with, and then I would describe something that I would love, so that if there were that kind of a door that could be opened, I was opening that door. So there's all different ways to frame your story, but I think one of the key things, and one of the things that's hard for us to do as women, is to be the heroine, to make ourselves, give ourselves the credit and paint ourselves in that light.
Do men do that more, Rebecca? They have no problems?
I think it's easier for them to be the hero of the story.
Okay.
I don't know. What does everybody else think?
Yeah. Karen's saying yes. Elise, did you have an answer there? Nope.
No. Yeah, I mean, it
I
might
was
be
gonna,
some.
s- oh,
Oh, go
I was just gonna say that I've owned my own business for a long time, so I've interviewed both men and women. And I would say, in my experience, it really depends on the person's personality, how much they make themselves the heroine. It wasn't so much a gender thing.
Oh, interesting.
So that was my takeaway. It really had to do with their personalities more than gender.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course you can go too far with that, right? You don't want to get into the point, to the place where you're boasting or seem overly, have an overly inflated opinion of yourself. When we were working at Upglow with people from other cultures, many cultures were more collective and less individualistic than the US, because the US is one of the I think it is the most individualist culture in the world. So it comes a little more natural to a US born person raised in this culture to talk about their accomplishments. But it would be harder for somebody from another country where that's frowned upon, where you actually should be talking about the team's accomplishments and not your individual ones. So finding that place where you're comfortable for your story, but it does reflect on who you are and how you have impacted organizations you've worked at or volunteer projects you've done. And obviously, authentically telling something about yourself. So thinking about authentic, we're going to do another poll. And on this one, I want you to think about a good friend or a colleague who knows you well. And think about how they might describe you from this list of descriptive pairs. We can go ahead and launch this poll. We're almost done. One more person is thinking about it. Great. Okay. So let me see if I end polling and share results. Okay. So here's what we've kind of got a real mixture, right? Of sort of right brain, left brain, or, disciplined and accomplished versus creative and clever. Couple of compassionate and thoughtful is a big one here. So I want to think about how your story reflects this about you and how the stories you tell do this. So for example, when I moved from corporate to nonprofit, I stopped trying to describe myself as, to focus so much on disciplined and accomplished, and I felt more comfortable in the space of compassionate and thoughtful, and innovative and inspirational. And so my story changed a little bit, and the way I told it changed a little bit. And then after both experiences, I started telling my story like I would talk about my career in two parts. So the first part of my career was in corporate human resources. and then I would talk a little bit about what I learned there. And then I made a switch to nonprofit, and I worked in an organization that, helped immigrants and refugees. Of course, that brought out compassionate. And then I could focus it in the way that was best for that particular audience. So if I'm in a job interview, it's going to be focused on the way, on the role that I'm applying for and the values of that organization. And if I'm if I'm meeting a stranger, it's probably going to be the most authentic version of who I really am, because I'm not trying to spin it in any particular way. Okay.
Would these change depending on what situation you're in, Rebecca, or do you believe you have to bring your authentic self to any business?
I think you have to bring your authentic self.
Okay.
What changes is what part of that you emphasize.
Okay.
Depending on the situation or the role. So I'd like to hear a little bit from the group. Thinking about what you said in your description. In fact, I'm going to go backwards if I can. Whoops. Sorry about that. Let me do this again. Okay. So thinking about how you described yourself, how would any of you be comfortable sharing a little part of your story that reflects that?
Sure. It's Deborah. I selected creative and clever, but I was really torn between innovative and inspirational because I don't think I'm just two of these words. I think that, I'm warm and funny too, probably warmer and funny than most employers have been. But in presenting myself in terms of a transition, my work has been kind of innovative and inspired changes in the industries that I've been participating in for a long time. So I have examples of that, and I've worked with a lot of startups or new companies. So I've had to bring a certain amount of creativity and, is it clever? Is it logical? Is it a combination of those things to the table in each instance? Because we were generally either starting something new, dusting something off that had to be, revisioned. And so, as an example, when I was creative director at Vera Wang, her bridal advertising, this is going back to the beginning, was very saccharine and very, very typically commercial bridal. And I completely changed the landscape to being, because I didn't understand bridal too much, so I made it about fashion. And that had a huge effect on the bridal industry in the sense that they'd never seen anything like that. And then I did it even to a bigger extent with other clients where we really just changed the language. And then I moved into publishing and did it with a bridal magazine. So there are examples of how I've had to be either very innovative or very creative in approaching something. But thinking outside of looking at it from the outside in more so than inside the forest, but looking at it from outside.
Yeah. So you have great stories from your work life that show innovative and inspirational and creative and clever. And it's, you can tell somebody you are those things, but those stories paint the picture so much more clearly. And that's what you want to do. want to share?
Anybody else? Someone else must. I know you are a talkative crowd. Come on.
I'm just checking our timing. Okay, we're good.
Okay.
Okay, well, now I want to just focus a little bit on, what can make our stories a little more complex. So again, at a certain point in life, you may have taken a gap or gaps in your career, and those become part of your story. You've probably been promoted more than once. Don't skim over those. You want to tell us the story of how you got promoted, why you got promoted. Key moments when you learned something, when you made a change or when you influenced somebody else's career. What happened to your team? Talking about, reflecting back maybe and thinking about how many people who worked for you who got promoted. It's interesting. I have a coaching group of young women right now. They're all probably in their early 30s. And they're all at that point where they've just been promoted and they're entering leadership roles for the first time. And it struck me how many of them have had really challenging managers. And so we've talked a lot about what makes a good leader. And one young woman in particular, she has a manager who is trying to hold on to her so bad that she's holding her back. She's holding back her career progression. And I thought, wow, when I interview somebody who's going to be a leader, I want to hear something like, I realized everybody on my team had been promoted. And they, most of them were promoted outside of my team, because you can't promote everybody in your own team and keep them unless you're the CEO. So, what a great thing that says about leadership. So what kind of twists and turns do people in the group have that might make for, an interesting twist in the story that they want to figure out how to tell? And so this is mostly from the first bullet point, some examples that I thought of. But anybody want to talk about their particular experience with a life twist or a career twist?
I'll go again if nobody else wants
Come on, you guys. I know you. I know you're a talk. Show Rebecca you're a talkative crowd. Come on. I know you have things to say. You don't have to be perfect here. We know that. Okay, Danielle says she has one too. So maybe Deborah, go ahead, and then Danielle will jump in.
Okay, well, I'm sort of at that turning point right now where I'm trying to figure out how to tell the story of why I'd like to close my own business and work for somebody inside. And it causes me great anxiety about how to present that, because one, I don't want to seem desperate for a job. And at the same time, there are certain things that I could say, like my daughter's going off to college and I'd like to have a change as well. And, and I've had all this expertise and I want to bring it to someone else where I can really do something. But, it all sounds, because I know that one of the reasons I want to do it is that almost all of my clients have suffered so much from this that their budgets have evaporated. And I just don't want, I've got too much, I want to do stuff and I don't want to be sitting there having to constantly, go, down in prices to make other people's businesses successful. And I'm like struggling because I'm charging a third of what I should be charging to help them. And so I really don't know how to tell that story, which is why I chose writing a cover letter, because it would be easier for me to explain that than it is like for me telling you this. But, since 2008 till now, the last 12 years, there've been a series of like great starts and then setbacks that had nothing to do with my skills or talent, but more so to do with my clients' positions. But you don't want to say that so much that way, because it makes it sound like you're, making excuses for why you want to make a change. Although they're all legitimate. If all your investors pull out of your business, then you have to let go the agency that's doing your business, no matter what success you've brought for them. So I'm in a turning point right now, and I don't know how to express that. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
That's a great example. That is terrific, because it's exactly, I heard several reasons, but you have a driving reason that's probably not what you're going to put in your story or not highlight in your story, because it's, don't think of it so much as hiding something as it's not really telling a potential employer something that they need to know about you. What's more interesting is that you have been a risk taker. You've succeeded in doing that. I heard you say you're ready for something new. Here's some potential things. And honestly, I just went through this because I've been doing consulting and coaching for about 1.5 years, and I actually just accepted a full-time job. So the whole time that I was doing this, I would also interview when there was something that I really wanted. And I struggled with that. How do I didn't want it to sound like, yeah, I'm doing this, but I can't really make a go of it. So will you hire me? And that wasn't really true. But some days my answer, if I just was honest, was like, I don't want to worry about health insurance. And of course, that I wasn't going to tell an employer that, but there were real things. Like, I missed being part of a team that I got to know. I missed having people report to me, because I really like being a boss. So, I do leadership coaching because I think I have some skills in that area, but I also just love doing it. So, Deborah, what are some of those things that you would enjoy doing in a full-time job that's not your business?
Well, I think what I like to do is focus mostly on the work as opposed to the overall structure of a business, although I'm not unhappy working to structure someone else's business. I think I'm an extremely good mentor. Most of my employees have stayed with me until I had to lay them off for various reasons because of financial things, for anywhere from 4 to 15 years. So I've mentored people really, really well. So I like building teams. I mean, those are the kinds of positions I'd want, or where I need to do team building, mentoring. I'm good at hiring. There are things that I enjoy about the job more than running the business and having to necessarily go out and find the business. But I mean, that's also like a catch-22, because sometimes people want to hire you to go out and get business, but that's not really what I love doing, because most of my business over the years has just walked through my door. So I haven't been somebody who had to go out and look for business. And so yeah, I think I like mentoring, building teams, I like branding in terms of making sure things that are, either new or need to be repositioned or consistent. And I really would like to just focus on those things and not be so, concerned about what clients I'm taking on. Do they have enough money to stay in business? And,
Yep.
That's been really hard. I mean, because I know right now I'm charging nothing for the most part of, compared to what I am accomplishing for people.
Yeah.
So that's my story. And just as an aside, when you were saying about promoting people, my first job, my second job out of college, was working for a woman who would take all my ideas and present them to her boss as her own. And then when I found out she took a huge project, I had developed this TV series for the company I was working for, and she literally took my name off and put her name on it and then left it in my mailbox by mistake.
Oh,
And I think that is why I am so careful about giving people credit for what they do and making them feel good about themselves, probably more than I should sometimes, because I build their egos up a little bit too much. But it was a very important part. And it was also because she was a woman that I found it even more important to do that with other women. So it's a lesson you can learn one way or the other. You can copy her bad behavior, or you can go in the other direction. So anyway,
yeah, I think good leaders have learned a lot from what they don't want to do from bad leaders. It's an important lesson when you would take the right thing, not, oh, I'm going to go mistreat people because I feel like I was mistreated, but instead I saw the effect that had on me at work and my engagement. And I'm, I don't want that in the team. I want a highly engaged, happy team. Anyway, I think your whole, that whole explanation you gave in just now can weave itself into a really good story. And remember, they want you to want the job. That's something recruiters are really looking for. They don't want someone who's just applying for everything and interviewing in a generic way. So when you can map your story, what you want, if it's a job where you are mentoring people, you can talk so authentically about wanting that. If it's a job, that has some of these things that it's just, there are a lot of things depending on the specifics of the job you're interviewing for that you can map to the story you were just telling.
Thank you.
Danielle, you had one that you were going to share?
Hi. Yeah. For me, I guess turning point, I guess that I could frame it as that one of the things that's really held me back and even now in, pursuing what I want is the career that I'm currently in. I sort of fell into accidentally because about 7.5 years ago, I was laid off from the position, from a position 6 months into it. Fault of my own. My boss and the team that hired me was all let go too. It was a corporate restructure. Hindsight's 2020. I would have never taken the job had I known what I know now about the things that were going on at the company. But long story short, that was, I was 15 years into a career at that point in the music business. I worked in music publishing, and I freaked out after, the layoff, and was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? It happened late in the year, which is, when things start to slow down in that business, and not a good time to really be pursuing anything. I felt like a total failure. I had been very successful, and the music publishing world is sort of small. So, even though these things weren't necessarily true, that's how I felt at the time. And so instead of really, sticking it out in that business, I took a temp job at Columbia University, where I still work, not as a temp. I mean, I've been promoted a few times since I've been there in a full-time position, but again, I sort of am accidentally working in higher ed. It hasn't been all bad. I got a master's degree and some other things along the way. That's how I met Lesley. But I guess I've always had a really hard time sort of explaining, why I, am doing what I'm doing now, which I don't necessarily love. It's just sort of a means to an end. Again, the benefits, the health insurance, I'd like to actually do more, perhaps in higher ed, but in a different, a little bit different than what I'm, specifically doing now. I was, I've supposed to have had a promotion, from the last like 2 years, but now with COVID and hiring freezes and budgets, et cetera, things have been sort of stalled. So I'm ready now to really, put myself out there. But I think I just have such a hard time sort of explaining myself and justifying it. And even though I've, being laid off isn't the end of the world, and I've certainly, had successes since then. I don't know. I really struggle with it.
So that's interesting, because I can hear some things in there that you can put into your story, such as you bloom where you're planted, and you take advantage of opportunity. So there's not just one path you can succeed on. You had a fork in the road, you took a different path, you thrived there. Now you're ready for another fork in the road. So, the framing, what we tend to do is frame it from our most insecure place sometimes. And when I look at what you're telling me, I'm not seeing, oh, that didn't work out, and now I'm here only because I temped. That's not at all the story you can tell. The story you can tell is about, going into another, higher education. For those of us, I used to think, I would love to work in higher education. So for me, I hear something like, oh, how cool, you got to do that. And yeah, and now you're going to do something else. Great. But you've probably got a lot of stories from that experience that show who you are and show how you can bloom somewhere else too.
Anybody else want to jump in there? Question about your story?
I'll jump in. I feel like I've had about 3 different lives, and none of them go together. So early on in my life, I lived abroad and I worked in marketing for many years, and I got promoted. And then my husband and I came back to the States, and I decided to go to law school. So I went to law school when I was older, did that, worked in law for about 12 years. I had 3 kids at that stage. So I stopped working for a period of time. And then I started working in nonprofit. My latest position was it was a startup nonprofit, if you can believe that. And it was really interesting how we got the funding and put it together. And there was sort of a lead time on whether or not this sort of idea, this funky idea, was going to work. And sort of the end of it coincided with COVID. It wasn't what we understood that it may or may not work. The funders, the sort of underwriters of this project, and the board decided, it may or may not work, and we're going to see, and we're going to give it this period of time. And we did that, and it wasn't working. And so we were pulling the plug just when COVID sort of hit. So that kind of dovetails nicely for me. But these things are very unconnected. Worked in marketing, was a lawyer, worked in nonprofit and operations. And I don't even know what I want to do with my life now.
So do you feel like it's about telling your story, or figuring out where you want to tell your story and to who right now?
I think it's a bit of both.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit of both. But I think the story is so unconnected. I have different ways of telling it and different pieces that I tell different people, right? Oh, I work in nonprofit, or, oh yeah, I was an attorney for a while, or, oh, how do you decide which piece to put out there, or do you put it all out there?
Yeah. So you probably need one that is a good general one that includes all of it, because again, you're not customizing it to a specific audience. And then you'd have other versions, like if you had a job interview in a field that was related to legal, you'd talk about it a little differently. If it was a job interview in a nonprofit, you'd talk about this probably as an evolution, right? So, what I'm hearing from you could go together in a lot of nonprofits that work with, because I worked with immigrants and refugees, and my client right now helps people with citizenship, which is a legal part of it. Like, I can see where there'd be some common threads in your
Mhm.
story. But it's probably going to take sort of exploring a few avenues and thinking how you weave together the different pieces in with for a few different versions of your story. Any thoughts from others on Renee's story?
I just had a question, which is, can you, I posted it as well. Is rethinking your life and its direction during COVID a good thing to use as a reason for wanting to pivot and do something else?
I think so. I think a lot of people can relate to that. Absolutely.
I think that's a very compelling reason to change what you're doing. I bet you a lot of people realized what they were doing was not valuable or was not contributing or was running them ragged for no reason. Or, I think that is, I think honestly, I can't imagine that there's not one person who went through this who hasn't rethought everything, even if they're the biggest jerk on the face of the earth. I think everybody's forced to rethink, do I want to be a jerk? Maybe the answer is yes.
Fortunately.
Yeah, right. But there are people like that. They get a joy out of it. Renee, I was going to tell you, there was I don't know, I don't think you were on the call where I discussed this before. There was a woman who was a dean of students down at Duke at one point when I went down there for an event, and she did this thing called "What is your question?" It was she was asking people in the audience, "What is your question?" And I thought, what a stupid, like, what's stupid. Why are we having, like, what do you mean, what is my question? I don't have any questions. I need answers. But when she started to talk about it, she was a sociologist, and she started to talk about it. And she said it was something that she evolved after interviewing all these students who would come to school, and some of them didn't know what they wanted to do, and some were already said, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer. Which her research showed was that, and especially with women, and especially with women who've taken time off, she said, during their careers for raising children or coming back in and coming out, if you sit down and really dig through your history, she says there is a thread. There is some thread that pulls those things together. And she said it's almost, there is a question you are trying to answer. If you think of it that way, it's a very weird little thing. Like, if you can spend some time, like, just even writing it on a pad, like, what is my question? And all these women stood up in this auditorium and they all started talking about the question that they had inside them, they were always trying to answer. And, I think if you think a little bit about, I don't think that your stuff is that disparate as you think it is. I think there is something you're trying to solve, and you just have to say, what is it that's driving me? And once you get that, it'll all hang like Christmas lights just on, it'll be like bing, 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 and it might be something that we could do in CoveyClub, or you can do with a coach in 1 or 2 sessions. But there's definitely a thread there. Like, for me, I had to figure out that I had a mother who fell apart after her divorce when I was 10. And so I've spent my life trying to educate women and trying to show them that they can have the life that they always wanted to have. I didn't realize my mission as an editor-in-chief of magazines. I started out in fashion. How did that all hang together? But that's my mission, was always trying to help women find a better life, because that's what my mother could not do. And you may find it goes all the way back like that, but it all hung together for me, because I was like, I don't know, I did fashion, then I did serious stuff, now I'm doing Covey. Like, they're not hung together, but they do. So think about that. Yeah, just keep asking yourself, what is my question? If I could get her, she went on to be the president of Middlebury, and if I could get her to do a session, I would. But she was amazing.
I love that. Thank you.
I love that too. Does anybody want to tell us what they think their question is?
Leanne, are you?
I don't know what first of all, that's an amazing way of putting it, and actually loved what you figured out your mission was, Lesley, because it actually resonated with me in a way that I hadn't articulated. But I was just going back to you, Renee, and I was thinking, and I'm sure we've seen this and read this. I mean, you've done, to the earlier points, a lot of things which to me do sound fairly related to each other. I'm also someone with a law degree, and I've worked in nonprofit, I've worked in government, and I'm thinking about pivoting into the private sector and thinking about how do I narrow that down. But I think the thing that I didn't hear from you and I'm wondering about is like, what were the things that actually felt really passionate about within those things that you want to do again? Is it a sector? Is it a kind of role that you really liked? Like you said at the end, you were doing some more operations, like within the various things that you've done, like what type of work and where, and like, how do you think about either what you loved or what you hear other people are doing that you're envious of? I know that we've heard that theme before, and I think it's really true. Like, who do you envy and why? What are they doing that you want to be doing? Because I think from there, I think we've also all been on the other side of the coin where we've networked with other people, we want to help other people, but when they're really open-ended about what they want to do, it's the hardest to help them. You know, so the more specific you can be, even if you're not totally sure, but like helping to narrow that field helps other people help you. So I think to the earlier points, like thinking yourself about being able to pinpoint more on, you know, either the field or the sector or the role, or ideally all three, that I think that can help other people help you as well in, you know, having conversations and thinking more about like what else is out there. You may not know every single type of role there is, or every type of position or company or nonprofit there is, but I think that just to the extent that you can at least hone in on what you really enjoyed the most, or hear other people are doing that you love, that you think sounds amazing, that I think would help a lot in sort of your.
I've been doing a lot of questions of people. What do you do? Tell me, when you actually walk into your office, your home office each day, what is it you do? Like, just tell me specifically, because I often find that I think I know what people do, but I really don't know what that means, you know? So I think thank you, Leanne.
And if you ever want to, you know, have a conversation with me just about like similarly, like I'm happy to do that. It's like a one-on-one conversation with you.
I would love that. All right. Thank you.
Perfect. That's CoveyClub at work.
Yay.
That's all. Yeah.
I wanted to, can everybody hear?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Hi, everyone. It's Karen. I've loved listening to all the major players that are successful, whether it's Richard Branson or whether it's the CEO of NBC, who's a woman, whatever the position is that are highly successful. I love, Lesley, when you said about the question, because I think the underlying question that I learned from listening to all of these major successful, but also happy people in their success, is the question is, what do you love to do and where are you fulfilled? And that to me is so simple, but really gets it down to such a personal thing. So your friends, your boss, your coworkers, your staff can all say, well, you know, you're really great at doing this and this, and you can be. We all have skill sets that are very great. But if you're not in love with what you do, irrespective of how great your skill is, and if you're not feeling fulfilled, then you come home and to me, it becomes more like work than doing something that you truly love. And out of love, what I've learned listening to all these business leaders is that, again, whether it's even Tony Robbins, is when you do whatever you love, including Dion Furstenberg, even listen to her story, is when you do what you love, you become very successful. And most of all, it doesn't feel like work.
You know, I did something from advice from someone, and it was really eye-opening. And I asked 6 people what they saw, things that they thought I did well. And it was really interesting to see, wow, you know, things that you don't appreciate that you can do very well, that's also very eye-opening, I think, and helps you gain insight into yourself.
Renee, that's a personal audit. You can do it if you look in our app at Jennifer Witter did a fabulous personal branding conversation with us really early on. And that's one of the things you can do to get clarity. You can even do it as a survey among people. You pick people from who knew you when you were in college, and you get them to say, because you need that outside perspective sometimes, but there's a whole technique to it. Sometimes you can invite people to a dinner and give them pizza and wine and do a whiteboard. And that gives you, because what happens is you drop a lot of stuff. Like, remember, I don't know how many of you, but I took tap, I took baton. I thought I was going to be a ballerina. I'm the biggest klutz in the face of the earth. I can't even go in the right direction in an exercise class. I don't do it because I cry. But that can teach you about all the things that you dropped along the way that you forgot, that your friends remember about you. And now, as when you're older, you can go back and pick those up. I mean, that's how Danielle and I met. Is I originally started out in, I went to be a marine biologist at Duke. That's why I went there. But I wasn't great at science at that point. I was better in English, and I was starting out my career. I moved over to being a writer. That's what I did. I looped back to it in my older time, and it was very joyful. But there are things that you drop for various reasons that will bring you great joy. And but take a look at Jennifer Witter's thing. There's also on the site, there's a lot about, if you pull up personal branding, you'll find some of that might be helpful.
Thank you.
Great. Well, I think we're just about.
Oh yeah, we're almost out. Ellie, did you want to
that.
add anything before we finish?
Me?
We haven't heard from you. Yeah.
Oh, hi. I just wanted to mention one thing, and thank you. This is incredible insight, and I'm so thrilled to talk with you. But I actually have the opposite. I have had the same career for like 25 years, maybe more, but it's doing the same things as a project manager for corporate real estate, mostly for banks. I was also in higher education, and now I'm in an investment bank. And I find that my story is actually it's not nuanced, and I don't know how to make it more interesting. I mean, I know recently I've had to pivot and do a lot of different things, writing, participating in different committees and programs. So I'm actually doing a lot of things that I'm not like originally trained to do as a designer or an architect. So that's more recent, and that's I guess that's the question. How do you develop your yourself in a way where it's sort of been somewhat like a horizontal kind of expression? I was promoted in other companies, but not in the one I'm currently in. I've been in sort of status quo.
And is that something where you want to position yourself for growth where you currently are?
I've spoken to a manager and to see how I can, develop and within the organization and within the department. And I do feel that I'm plateaued. They're not giving me they've given me a lot of responsibility, but not the necessarily the promotion that goes along with it. And for some reason, I've had good yearly reviews, nothing, out of the ordinary, very, high performing person, hardworking, I'm well liked. So, I'm trying to figure out if I should try to, try something new within the organization, apply to different positions. I work for a Toronto-based bank, so a lot of the positions are in Toronto or Ontario. So that's not really an option for me right now.
Yeah. So, but it sounds like you've taken the first step, which is to let your manager know that you are interested in, growth and change and doing something more, having a new challenge. And that sounds like the first step. And when you were describing things, you seemed to say that you actually had recently been doing some new things.
Yes.
Are they things that you enjoy?
You know, they're what I'm good at. I think they figured it out. And I'm always one to, if you were to describe me, I dig into things. I'm very positive, and I'll say I'll take care of it. I'll do it. They know I'm a doer. I'll take on new assignments. I don't complain. You know, I'm always up for the challenge. I think it is good to challenge yourself, even in areas that you may or may not love. So yeah, I would say I'd say I do enjoy what I'm doing now.
And was your manager open in that conversation? Enthusiastic?
Yeah, she's always promoting me and suggesting that I be on this committee or I'm take care. You know, she's always putting my name in front. So I do appreciate that. It's better to be you know, in the limelight or in you know, as opposed to
Visible.
Right, visible is better instead of being visible. So I guess you could say that that's really good, but I don't know. I'm not saying that I'm burnt out, but I've been doing a lot of the same things over and over again, and I'm good at it. I have a, you know, established career, but you know, it's just been the way, you know, that's my choice though. I can't put it on anybody else except that's been my choice. So
I had a question for you, which is, you said your company is Toronto based.
yes.
Do you work remote for them in Toronto, or do you work in an office in New York?
Yeah, I actually first it was down on Vesey Street in the financial district, and now we're in Jersey City. So
well, I was just going to say that having had Canadian clients, the way they operate in terms of, like, every country has its own thing, but the salaries are way lower in Canada, and I don't know how it works. I just know another friend of mine was working for an English accounting firm here, and she was running up the same problems because just the way they pay people is different than the way the New York metropolitan area necessarily looks at compensation. And I'm not quite sure what promotions are like. I'm sure they have an American company that's paying you, but they may be going by Canadian standards.
I believe you're correct. Yeah, we call it the enterprise, and they pretty much set the standards and the rules that we have to follow.
Ladies, this is so interesting. We could go on. I'm going to now do, I think we should do What is Your Question as a webinar, an event that we'll do where we'll dig into what is our question. I'll try to figure out how I can steal what I learned from her, and we'll push it further. And maybe we should even do something on how to position yourself for growth, which is an interesting thing that would encapsulate everybody here. Before you hop, I just want to tell you all about, we have free cocktails and conversation tomorrow night, which is tomorrow Wednesday? Yes. 6 p.m. We're doing it in the evening. What are you going to keep after COVID? I want you all to bring your thoughts about what are you going to keep, and we're going to share those so other people can learn from that. I think we all learned a great deal about ourselves and about our lives we don't want to give up. Then we have storytelling for business, which is shape the stories you need to tell about your company for success. So it's more outwardly facing. That's Thursday, May 6th at 2 p.m. That's Deborah Burns. She was a seller in the publishing area. Now she's a writer. She's written some fabulous books. She has a new book called Authorize It, Think Like a Writer to Win at Work. Our positive mornings, you guys all know about that, I believe, which is our coaching sessions to get a positive spin on each week. And then 3 ways to attract a high quality partner. Tuesday, May 11th at 2 p.m. with Sandy Weiner. She's a relationship expert and scam likely, hold on, decline. Will help you achieve healthy off the charts love in your second half of life. Bring friends, tell friends about it. Anyway, we'll go from there. So if anybody wants to hang on here for a few minutes with Rebecca, if she has a few more minutes, and I will process these other two ideas because I think I learned a lot about what everybody's looking for here. Thank you, guys. Thanks so much. Thank you, Rebecca.
Leslie. Thank you so
Bye.
much. Thank
All
you.
right.